Good evening. Welcome to this planning meeting. For those of you who have not attended a meeting previously, this is a meeting in public, not a public meeting. This means that visitors are allowed into the council chamber to listen to the meeting. They may not call out. If this happens, I will adjourn the meeting to clear the public from the chamber. During the meeting, each item on the agenda will be taken in turn and will be determined on its merits in line with planning policy and law. First, the case officer makes their opening presentation about each item. Then, if a member of the public has registered to speak about an item, they'll be invited to come to the podium and can speak for 3 minutes. Members of the committee can then ask questions of fact only about what the speaker said to clarify a point. The speaker must give brief factual answers. Then the members of the committee can ask questions of the planning officer for clarification of anything to do with that item. And when all the questions have had a response, the case officer's recommendation to approve or refuse an item must be debated by the committee. Each member of the committee may speak just once in debate. They may not ask further questions. And when those members who wish to speak have done so, then a formal vote is taken to accept or reject the recommendation. That'll do for now. That's quite long, wasn't it? Sorry. Do we have any apologies for absence, please?
We have apologies from Councillor Temperton. She might arrive slightly late.
Thank you. Do we have anyone online? No members online. We've got a few officers online, is it? No, that's fine. Thank you. So no apologies. Minutes. Does anybody have a question or a comment about the minutes, please? Last meeting. Okay, I move the recommendation that we accept the last month's minutes as a correct record. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Mackenzie Boyle, thank you. Okay. Those in favour of that recommendation, please show. Unanimous, thank you. Okay. We have declarations of interest in case any members have anything to disclose. Members are asked to declare any disclosable pecuniary or affected interests in respect of any matter to be considered at this meeting. Any member with a disclosable pecuniary interest in a matter should withdraw from the meeting when the matter is under consideration and should notify Democratic Services officer in attendance that they are withdrawing as they have such an interest. If the disclosable pecuniary interest is not entered in the register of members' interests in the monitoring, then the monitoring officer must be notified of the interest within 28 days. Okay, is there anyone with an interest to declare? No. Okay, thank you. Any urgent items of business?
None, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, on to the items, and we will, as I say, take number 5 second, so that we can wait to see if the other speaker shows up. And first, before we start on anything else, to be noted that the last item 8, about Dell House, the demolition, has been delegated for approval because there were no objections. So that has been decided. It will go ahead. Okay, so item 6 is the Wellington Road, Crowthorne, proposed first floor extension to existing bungalow. May we have the officer's report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening all. My name is Kevin Lloyd-Jones and I am the presenting officer for this case. Now, this is a full application for a proposed first floor extension to an existing bungalow. The application has been brought to Planning Committee as it has received greater than 5 objections. The application site comprises a detached 3-bedroom bungalow on an approximately 800 square metres plot accessed down a driveway from the southern side of Wellington Road. The dwelling is neighboured by the Hollies to the west, number 60 Wellington Road to the north, and the rear of the bungalows on Mulberry Close to the east. The dwelling is orientated in an east-west direction. The front elevation faces west, which is 90 degrees to the prevailing orientation of adjacent dwellings and against the orientation of the plot. This is where the location of the front door is. Now, the southern side boundary is separated from Lower Broadmoor Road by a strip of amenity land under Bracknell Forest Council maintenance, which features a prominent avenue of mature trees. There is no access to the site from Lower Broadmoor Road. The site is within the settlement boundary and within the East Crowthorne character study area. The first image on the screen shows the pre-existing site taken from the estate agency photographs at the beginning of this year. During the course of this application, the shared double garage with the Hollies has been reduced to a single garage, thus widening the access into Bukhara. An outbuilding has been erected to the side of the dwelling under permitted development rights, with 2 additional parking spaces alongside. A prior approval application for an upward extension at Bukhara was refused by the local planning authority in February of this year and has now been subsequently dismissed at appeal by the planning inspectorate, just this week in fact. The inspector's sole reason for dismissing the appeal was the overlooking impact of the front-facing first-floor windows on the Hollies to the west. It is considered that this current application addresses that concern. The inspector did not uphold the LPA's design reason for refusal, stating, "The wider area is characterised by an eclectic mix of buildings that vary in height, age, and architectural style, including a range of materials, architectural detailing and window arrangements," concluding, "The proposed development would not result in harm to the external appearance of the host property or to the character and appearance of its immediate surroundings. This is a material consideration in the determination of this planning application." Move on. Stuck on a... Yeah. Right, sorry, the proposal. The first image, the upward extension would be solely on the footprint of the existing dwelling. The ground floor elevations would remain in brick. The first floor would be clad in grey vertical panels. The hipped roof would be clad in tiles to match the existing dwelling. The ground floor would be remodelled to include living rooms, an office, utility and kitchen diner. The proposed first floor would include 4 bedrooms, 3 ensuite and 1 family bathroom. The ground floor fenestration would remain as existing. The proposed first floor windows, this is key, to both the front and rear elevations would be of obscured glazing with fan light opening only. They serve either bathrooms or the stairwell. The bedrooms would be served by side windows, either looking northwards over the garden or southwards towards Lower Broadmoor Road. So I'll now address the impact on highway safety, the impact on the character and appearance, and the impact on neighbour amenity. So the site plan shows 2 parking spaces to the side of the outbuilding, at the side of the bungalow. This is accompanied by a swept path analysis showing how the spaces are accessed. The council's highway authority requested 3 parking spaces to be provided for this 4-bedroom property, as per our parking standards SPD. However, given the pre-existing situation was just 1 garage for the dwelling, it is deemed 2 car parking spaces would be appropriate for this development. Despite the existing plans submitted with this application showing 4 bedrooms, previous applications and the sales details from this year show the dwelling as 3 bedrooms, and that is what we have considered the existing dwelling. Therefore, the proposed 1 additional bedroom would increase the number of required parking spaces by 1, so going from 1 to 2. The outbuilding cannot be considered as parking as it is below the size standards to be considered as a garage. 2 swept bath diagrams for reversing onto the site and therefore exiting in a forward gear was submitted by the applicant. The shared accessway has now also been included in the applicant's red line, which can be used as an additional turning area to allow vehicles to exit onto Wellington Road in a forward gear. The Highway Authority do not object to this proposal based on the most recently submitted parking plan. And Kian, I'll run through this at the end. A condition would be imposed on the permission requiring a construction and environmental management plan, which must be approved in writing by the local planning authority before any development can begin. This is detailed in section 11 of the committee report, and I'll run through it in detail at the end of my presentation. So looking at impact on the character and appearance, the East Crowthorne Character Assessment SPD describes this area as consisting of individual houses with varied designs. The bungalow sits in a large plot with limited public views from Wellington Road or Lower Broadmoor Road, Mulberry Close being the only public vantage point. One of the prior approval application refusal reasons was on design. It was felt that simply extending the existing building materials upwards would exacerbate a plain design, being devoid of any architectural features. As mentioned, the planning inspector did not agree with that refusal reason. The proposed roof would have a shallow pitch to all sides and be tiled to match existing. The ground floor brickwork would remain as existing, and as I say, the first floor elevations would be in grey cladding. This would break up what would otherwise be a vast expanse of brick and minimise the impact when viewed from Mulberry Close. So looking at neighbour amenity, I'll first address sunlight and daylight, the impact. A consideration in assessing the impact on neighbour amenity is the maintenance of reasonable levels of daylight and sunlight to habitable rooms. This is assessed using the BRE, Planning for Daylight and Sunlight, guidance notes. To demonstrate the impact of a rear-to-rear elevation, Mulberry Close to Bokhara, a line is drawn at a 25-degree angle from the centre of the nearest habitable window towards the proposed development. If the line is not intersected by the proposed upward extension, then there would be limited impact on the sunlight daylight entering the neighbouring dwelling. As you can see in the bottom right picture, the 25-degree line would clear the top of the proposed dwelling, shows the upward extension would not have an unacceptable impact on the light entering the neighbour to the rear. So, considering privacy and also overlooking, the windows in the eastern rear elevation facing Mulberry Close and those in the western front elevation, which face the Hollies, would all be obscure glazed and non-opening, below 1.7 metres. That is conditioned. As I say, the first floor side windows do not directly overlook any neighbouring dwellings. There are no roof lights or dormer windows proposed. This would remove potential overlooking issues as a reason for refusal. The photograph to the top right shows the view, top left, shows the view from the garden of the Hollies towards Bokhara. The location plan shows that there is minimal overlap between these two dwellings. The first floor would appear above the mature hedging along the boundary line, but would not be considered to be unduly overbearing. The bottom image shows the view looking towards westwards from Mulberry Close. The rear eastern elevation of Bokhara is 3.84 metres from its boundary, and 7.6 metres from the nearest rear elevation of 11 Mulberry Close. That elevation, however, only has a high-level window. The nearest elevation with bifold doors is 11.4 metres distance. 11 Mulberry Close sits on a large plot with the main amenity space stretching south towards Lower Broadmoor Road. Now, it's accepted that the first floor extension will be noticeable from this viewpoint, but is not deemed to be close enough and therefore harmful enough to warrant a refusal of this application. The planning inspector, when determining the recent prior approval appeal, had to consider the impacts on the amenity of any adjoining premises, which includes overlooking privacy and the loss of light. The only reason for refusal was overlooking towards the Hollies. All other factors were deemed acceptable. I quote, "Given the varied character of the surrounding built form, the proposal would not appear unduly discordant with its context." So running through the conditions, obviously the commencement plans, materials, but a construction management plan, which is pre-commencement, so that means it has to be discharged before anything can happen, will go through routing of construction traffic, parking, loading, unloading, location of temporary buildings, working hours, wheel washing, and turning of construction vehicles. So that will need to be signed off by the Highway Authority before anything happens here. And the other conditions are for the front and rear first floor windows to be obscure glazed and non-opening, and also any future front or rear first windows and those above to be obscure glazed and non-opening below 1.7 metres. So in conclusion, it's considered that the proposed upward extension is acceptable in principle and would not result in an unacceptable adverse impact on the character of the area, on highway safety, nor would the development result in a detrimental impact on the residential amenity of the occupiers of the neighbouring properties. No material considerations exist that indicate there should be a departure from the development plan, and accordingly, the application is recommended for conditional approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Officer. I think we have a speaker. Is it Barry Fenton? Hi. Yes, you know how to do it. Okay, you 3 minutes, and I'll give you a 20-second warning when you've only got 20 seconds left. Just give me a moment to get the timer. First things. Right.
Okay.
Ready, steady.
Hi, I'm Barry Fenton. I live at the Hollies, adjacent to Buckora. Every neighbour with a common border has objected to this development. The parish council has objected. I asked the committee to reject the proposal for the following reasons. Out of keeping with the local vernacular, the previous application was rejected for this exact reason, which went to appeal, as we've just heard, which was and has been dismissed. The overall structure remains the same, and therefore so do the grounds for our rejection. Another question. Why is Wellington Road relevant? Limited public view means Wellington Road provides no meaningful comparison. The committee surely must assess Buckora against its immediate neighbours, the bungalows in Mulberry Close and my house, the Holly. The planning report is incorrect in that it claims that Buckora sits away from existing dwellings. Bungalows 11, 12 and 13 on Mulberry Close back closely onto the site. My house sits alongside it. A double garage was built earlier this year. Apparently it didn't need planning permission, but it's out of spec. It is metal clad and resembles an industrial unit. It is an eyesore. The same material is planned for the first floor of the new development. Second issue, overlooking and loss of amenity. The original refusal cited overlooking into my garden. The revised plan still has windows overlooking neighbours. Bedroom windows at the end of the house will overlook bungalows in Mulberry Close. Specifically, the master bedroom in number 13 The development will affect the light, privacy and residential amenity. How does this comply with policy LP2, which requires no adverse impact on the amenity of neighbouring premises occupiers? Parking and site irregularities. A question. Why are only 2 parking spaces acceptable when guidelines require 3? 1 car already parks on my land. The parking swept path analysis also shows vehicle movement on land owned by 60 Wellington Road, not the applicant. A new site and location plan appeared recently showing different boundaries from what's on the land registry. There's going to be problems with access because the passageway to Wellington Road is my property with a right-of-way for Bakara. It barely fits and lets a medium car go down it. Construction deliveries and clearances will be difficult. In summary, please consider factual errors about neighbours' proximity. How does overlooking comply with policy LP2? Why are parking standards being waived? And why do plans show different boundaries and use of third-party land? 3 minutes?
Just over. I'll let you go a bit, because I could see that the end was nigh. Can I please ask members if they have a question of fact for Mr. Denton? Thank you. Councillor Virgo, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the speech. Would I be correct in saying that just around there are mainly bungalows?
On Mulberry Close,
Yes.
yes, which is to one side. Yes, there's about 8 or 9.
So predominantly bungalows.
All bungalows.
Okay, thank you very much.
And my own house is a bungalow with a bedroom on the first floor in the roof.
Thank you. Questions? Other questions, members? Right. I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I don't think we have another speaker for that one. So any questions for the officer, please? Excuse me. Councillor Smith, please.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, just on the right to light assessment, you showed that very useful drawing with the angle shown. I was just wondering that there was a second window which was marked as higher level that wasn't used for that assessment. I was just wondering if you could explain why we don't assess from that window, because it was much closer.
Through you, Chair. That high-level window is not the only source of light for that room. There is a side face or southern-facing window in that room.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie Boyle.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Officer Kevin, thank you very much for your report. Are you aware that that little causeway is the only access coming in? Do you know that there's a watercourse underneath there?
I am aware that is the only access onto the site, and no, we haven't. It's not subject to flooding, so we haven't considered a FRA for that.
Okay, may I supplementary? It may not be a danger to flood, but what it would be a danger that it would collapse if you're going to have heavy vehicle movements, if they need to put some, I don't know, building equipment in there.
Through you, Chair, that would be a consideration for the Construction Environment Management Plan, which we are requesting as a pre-commencement condition.
Thank you for that. Councillor Virgo.
Thanks, Chair. I've got a few. Kevin, can you tell me the width of that path, first of all, that is the only access to the property, please?
Don't know exactly. It's 3 metres, I would say. I've driven down in a large car.
Do you not think
But
we
I
should...
accept it's a narrow path.
Do you not think we should have measured it, really, to make sure that this works?
I accept it's a narrow path, but we're not considering that. That would be how it's constructed would be a matter for the construction management plan. It is accessible by a car, which allows for parking on the site, which is what we've considered as part of this.
Do you not think, though, if I may just pursue this, if we are considering the planning application, this is a difficult site to get to. I mean, anyone can see that because we went very keen to go on a site visit last week. That is part of the whole process of giving permission. And therefore, if members are to decide this information is crucial, because I don't quite see how huge trucks can get down that path, to be honest, because as you know, there is a hedge on either side. So I just wonder if that's been properly thought out, and maybe the transport officer could tell us more about it.
Can we ask the highways man?
Through you, Chair. Andy Wells, Highways. The two separate points here that raised in your question. The first is about the access itself. The access, we have to bear in mind, is an existing access to a residential property. This is not a new development of a new property. It's a site that has a residential property on it, and that is its existing access. In terms of construction traffic, that will be dealt with through a submitted construction environmental management plan, which is conditioned to be required before commencement of development. It is not for consideration at this meeting or as part of this application.
Thank you. Can I take Councillor Smith first, user? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. The public speaker raised a point with regard to the swept path analysis for the vehicular access and made a claim that seems to show a section of land which is not in the applicant's control. I was just wondering if the officer would be able to advise on that and any implications of that.
Through you, Chair. The applicant provided the title deed showing the area that is allowed access across, which includes a turning area before accessing directly into the site. So that is what was included in the red line plan.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie-Boyne.
Thank you, Chair, through you again. The tight access, you know, I'm pretty worried. I'm on the fire authority, as like is our chair. How are you going to get a fire engine down there?
I suppose as they do at the moment.
Yeah, through you, Chair. As previously stated in my answer to Councillor Virgo, the access is an access to an existing residential property. That situation is unchanged. Building regulations requirements are what set out requirements for fire access. They are subsequent to the planning process.
Councillor Collins.
Thank you. The speaker mentioned the use of metal cladding in the same way as the outbuilding is clad. Is that really the case, that the property will also be clad in metal?
Through you, Chair. No, the applicant stated the cladding will be wood, dark wood.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hayes, please.
Yes, then can you clarify for me, because the design of a garage that has been, or a building that's been placed there at the moment, is clad in such a way that it's detrimental to the sighting. Just clarify if you could to me, Kevin.
Through you, Chair. The outbuilding has been constructed under permitted development rights, which doesn't require matching materials. A planning enforcement officer has visited the site and confirmed that that outbuilding is permitted development. It's to the side of the dwelling.
Thank you. Councillor Penfold, please.
The houses in Mulberry Close, the bungalows, are very close. Will there be any mitigation for their privacy?
Through you, Chair. The windows facing Mulberry Close will be conditioned to be obscure glazed. So any windows at first floor level are either north facing or south facing. So no direct line of sight into Mulberry Close.
Councillor Virgo.
Could I pursue one of our planning points, and that is on neighbourly? And I wonder, Kevin, whether you consider this strongly enough, but I think you would agree that, as we've already established from the speaker, it's mainly bungalows of similar height. This would obviously double that height, and therefore I can't see how that could appease that particular policy, because it would stick out like a sore thumb. I wonder how you feel about that.
Through you, Chair. It's a matter of planning judgment. I felt there was sufficient distance between the bungalows and Bokhara, and that has been enforced by the planning inspector's decision in this week's report, where that was not cited as a reason for refusing the prior approval application.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie Boyle.
May I, again, through you, Chair, thank you. I'm a bit nervous about this large building, this garagey thing. Have you looked at the Crowthorne Neighbourhood Plan and look at the policies there and their design statement?
As I mentioned, the garage is permitted development, so that is allowable without needing planning permission.
So, supplementary, so a neighbourhood plan carries no weight?
Towards permitted development, that's correct. It's the general permitted development order.
Why have we spent an awful lot of money and time putting having a neighbourhood plan if suddenly it goes out the window? It's very worrying, Kevin. It's not towards you, but it's a very worrying thing.
I appreciate your comment, but it's supposed to be questions. Okay, I do have a question myself. Mr. Denton spoke about a bedroom which is on the end that could be overlooking one of the gardens of the bungalows.
There are no windows directly facing the bungalows that have on either side that have clear glass. They're either directly facing north, so towards the outbuilding that's been built, or south towards Lower Broadmoor Road.
I wonder about the angle to from those windows and whether that's relevant.
Well, there'll always be an angle that would be viewed, but there's also a two-storey dwelling just to the north, where they also have an angled view towards the bungalows.
Yeah, that's true. It's a bit further away, though. Yeah, sorry. Do you want to comment on that?
Thank you, Chair. Through you. No, I would agree with Kevin in terms of it's an oblique view in terms of the overlooking, and my understanding is that there's some boundary screening along that flank boundary. Is that correct?
There is hedging on the facing the Hollies, yes. Mature hedging, yeah.
And so it's the oblique.
Not on the other side, but yeah, it's oblique angles. You know, it's yeah.
Councillor Hayes.
It's my bad arm. So therefore, would that not, if someone came along with a chainsaw and takes it out, how do we verify then it's then still going to be able to help the neighbourhood as such, the screening?
Through you, Chair, yes, that's possible because it's not protected. But again, the views are oblique and the dwellings do not overlap. So views towards the west would be restricted.
Thanks, Chair. Kevin, can I go back to the parking, because it frustrates me. How many parking spaces should they have if this was a new house of 4 bedrooms?
Through you, Chair. If it was a new house constructed today, the parking standards say 3 spaces for a 4-bedroom dwelling. But with all applications, we look at the uplift if it's an extension. So if it's a current existing situation of 1 and requires 1 more, then it would be two spaces.
The reason I asked the question is because the speaker already said that parking is already on his property, and therefore that's without the extension. So I just wonder if this all taken into consideration. When we saw it on site, it did seem very tight to me. I'm just wondering how we can rectify we can agree that you just don't need it, when it would seem when you look at it, you do need it, frankly.
Thank you.
Through you, Chair.
Highways Officer, thank
The Highway Authority did initially request 3 spaces to be compliant with the parking standards SPD. And the Planning Authority, on looking at what was currently provided and what was proposed in terms of the uplift in the number of bedrooms, the difference is that 1 additional space is required over and above what is currently there. So the current site is a shortfall of 1 space against the current standards, bearing in mind that house has been there much longer than the current standards have been in place, and the proposal is therefore similarly 1 space short of the current standards. Looking at the plans that have been submitted, there is probably space on that site to accommodate a 3rd vehicle. It's just not shown on the plan.
Thank you.
I have a supplementary. The fact is we have to look at the plan, I think you would agree, as presented to this committee. And therefore, if there isn't such a space, we can't consider that. Would you agree with that?
Through you, Chair, the standard worded parking condition does refer to the approved plans. So therefore, the parking that would need to be retained is that shown on the approved plans, and therefore 2 spaces.
I think actually there was a car in the garage when we were there, so it's possible there's space for 3 anyway.
If that's a question, Chair, would you like me to answer?
Yes, please. Sorry.
The garage as provided on site does not meet our parking standards SPD space sizes to be a garage. It did in fact meet our parking standards SPD space sizes to be a carport before the door was put on it. And therefore we cannot condition it to be parking. That does not preclude the owner of the property from parking in it.
Sounds mad to me.
I must progress on this because it's very weird. If the council, through our wonderful highways department, think that this isn't sufficient, then why was it accepted? I mean, I don't quite understand how we can get through the back door and say, oh, well, in this case, it's okay. I don't get it.
Through you, Chair, this is the way that we deal with planning applications for extensions to existing properties. So as the case officer said, because there is an existing shortfall of 1 space, we're looking at the uplift in the number of bedrooms, and it's going from 3 to 4. So we have ensured that there is an additional parking space to serve the additional bedroom that's been provided as a result of this development. And this is the approach that we take as standard across the borough.
I do understand that, but the fact of the matter is it has 4 bedrooms. I mean, you can argue till the cows come home, but the fact is it has 4 bedrooms. And anybody in this borough on other applications that don't have enough parking, we refuse it. I don't quite understand how we can get round it.
Understand. Okay, well, but we have our rules, don't we?
Through you, Chair, I'm not sure that was a question, but I'll try and answer it anyway. I
can frame the question, James, if you want.
And I'm not James. The approach taken here is consistent.
I thought it was James, sorry, my fault.
The approach taken here is consistent with the approach we take to extensions to existing dwellings across the borough, and is therefore consistent with other planning decisions that have been taken across the borough. The parking standards are there to set out the standards for new development, and in this instance, the new development is effectively an additional bedroom in parking standards terms, which requires, because it's an uplift from 3 to 4 bedrooms, 1 additional space to be provided.
Thank you. Councillor Collins first, please.
I'm just rereading the appeal decision that's just come out this week, and in my opinion, the inspector has considered the design of the proposed building, to be in keeping with those in the surrounding area as they're eclectic. However, I don't believe that he has considered the overbearing nature of the additional story on the bungalows in Mulberry. I wonder if you could explain to me why I'm wrong and you're right.
Please.
It is through you, Chair. It's a requirement of Class AA of the General Permitted Development Order that any impact on neighbour amenity is considered, and overlooking is specific. So overbearing and overlooking are specifically mentioned. So when the inspector would have been making his decision, that would have had to been considered. And the only reason given in the appeal is the overlooking from those first floor front windows facing westwards towards the Hollies.
Yes, you.
Sorry, he will have considered the other properties when he visited the site.
Through you, Chair, yes, that's a requirement of Class AA of
Right.
the GPDO.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mackenzie Boyle, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can we go back to this swept path? I'm driving my little car up, I call it the causeway, okay? So I've got to go up there and I'm going to go into the garage, so I'm nose first. So to get out, I'm going to have to sweep round, and I think from what the first speaker said, that part of that sweeping round would go onto his land. Is that allowable? So the swept path analysis doesn't really sit with me very well, I'm afraid.
Yep.
Through you, Chair. The swept path shown here is on the site, accessing into Bokhara. The title deeds show that there is allowed access, legal access, to be able to turn in the entrance and access down the narrow road.
Okay. Councillor Presland, yes, sorry.
Just with what Sheila was saying, Sheila Mackenzie Boy was saying. So my problem with this is if you were driving up there and then there were cars parked in, we saw the garage there, the garage area. If there were an additional 2 cars there, you wouldn't be able to turn round. It would be really tight, in my opinion. I'm struggling a bit with how that's all going to work out.
Could you explain?
Through you, Chair. Sorry, question being, as we said, the requirement is for 2 car parking spaces, and that is what is shown on the plans. So obviously we cannot plan for many cars to be parked at the site when the requirement is for 2.
Thank you. Oh, Councillor Mackenzie Boyle again, please.
Glimpse of the blindingly obvious, I apologise. They've got some friends over, and they've got other cars there. I agree.
This is supposed to be questions, not debate. We're getting out of order here. Right. Let me just pause a moment. Councillor Temperton, I'm afraid you've come in halfway through or part way. That's right. Not allowed to vote. Okay. You'll be good for the next, so thank you. Lovely. I think that's all the questions, and we're straying into debate already. So we'd better move on swiftly. So I need to move the recommendation on page, 47. No, 59. Sorry. Yes, with the amendment to the recommendation of on page 2 of the supplementary report. So I move that. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Collings.
I'm happy to second.
Thank you. So, debate. Who would like to open the debate, please? Councillor Virgo, reminder you only get to speak once in debate.
I understand. Madam Chairman, we all went very kindly on the minibus to see this on Saturday, and I think it was a very useful visit because we saw the situation, and the first thing that concerned me as a member was the narrow entrance for the site. Now, this is just like a drive. It's a very small drive. It's not a path. It's nearly a path, actually, with tall hedges on either side. So trucks getting in to put new arches up for the house will have great difficulty. It will obviously disturb the neighbours fantastically because that path is right next to an existing house. So that goes without saying. Kevin, the officer, was very gracious, I think, in saying planning is a matter of balance. And I think it is in this case. You look at it, you consider that someone wants to put an extra story on the bungalow for obviously good reasons. And then there are the disadvantages. Well, you know, the disadvantages stand out for me greater. First of all, it's much higher than the surrounding properties, which are bungalows. And in fact, we were taken around in the bus to see it from the back of the property in the street where it's a cul-de-sac. And it was quite obvious when we looked at it, this would stick out like a sore thumb. No doubt about that. The second point is you have to think about the neighbours that's surrounding. They built their properties and bought their properties at one level. And then suddenly you have a house. And I wonder, Madam Chairman, if this was now, if this was an application for a house there, given all these circumstances, I bet you we would have refused it on many grounds. And it's only sliding through, really, because it's an existing property and they can just about find the parking. And we turn to the parking. And, as the highway officer said, it would have been turned down on certain grounds because it doesn't have the specific number of parking. Now, this is never going to change, And as we've all said, as members said into this room, when you have visitors, when you have people delivering things, good luck. Because it's going to be hell. And it's not fair on the existing houses, existing bungalows, I think, to see that chaos. So, look, I, if I may, other members may have a completely different view as I do, but I think if you weigh these things up, I'm afraid the negative beats it, and I can't support it. And I do believe there's a blue sheet should members decide not to vote for this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie Boyle, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. The appeal for the last property on this, or they were trying to put, it was the PDAS, I think Kevin was saying. May I call you Kevin? Thank you very much indeed. Now, the inspector didn't uphold that, did he? They were saying that there were buildings in various height, age and architectural site, but they are bungalows in Mulberry Close. And this is going to be a proposed two-storey, and they will have a direct overlook. This will have an overlook to the bungalows. It can't be dismissed that it might be. It is definitely going to be. And I have to say that the supplementary has been well edited. The proposed development would not result in harm to the external appearance, and this is a material consideration. However, carefully worded, the inspector, who, on balance, we always have to listen to, it said it would harm the amenity of the adjoining premises. And that I cannot possibly support this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say firstly, I feel incredibly sympathetic towards the neighbours in this one. I think if I were the owner of any of those houses, I would feel incredibly uncomfortable with this, and I would personally want to fight it exactly as they have. It's quite a complicated case, I think, particularly because this isn't, a fresh property, and there's a lot of baggage attached to it due to the history of the property and the fact that it's an extension of an existing property that makes this more complicated to consider than it would be for a new property. For me, I think that the really significant circumstances are that we've had the appeal decision on the previous application, and having reviewed that appeal this week and the inspector's determination, it's very clear that the application that's before us now addresses the reasons that the inspector cited for refusal of that previous application. It was solely to do with the overlooking from those windows on the aspects facing Mulberry and the Hollies, which is adequately addressed as we would normally expect it to be in this application. So there's a lot of other aspects to this application I personally am uncomfortable with, and in other circumstances might seek to see this refused on. I think we have to consider that determination for the planning inspector, which of course is entirely representative of what we would expect from the planning inspector were this application to go to appeal. So for that reason, unfortunately, I can't really see that there's a specific basis to refuse it. I would ask, one of my colleagues has mentioned there is a blue sheet. I was just wondering if it's possible if anyone could just explain what the reasons for refusal that are presented in the blue sheet are, because that would be interesting to hear before we make our determination.
I think we can have a reading, can't we?
Through you, Chair, shall I show the blue sheet? I have it on. No.
Yeah, could we read it?
Sorry, Councillor Smith, I don't think our procedure allows us to share that blue sheet before this proposal that's been moved has been refused. So although there's nothing preventing Councillor Virgo from showing you.
Point of order, actually, Chairman. I've done this committee for about 25 years, and what happens normally is that blue sheets are delivered in paper form to the member, and it's quite happy when the member speaks and puts that forward to the committee that that blue sheet is shared between members. End of story.
That's very true. Would you like to read the blue sheet, please?
Are we all ready?
No, I'm not allowed to do that.
One, you're okay.
It's quite short, actually.
Yeah, I'm going to say that.
So we're having copies.
You've got copies. I won't read it.
Well, read it.
Do you want to read it? Okay. So, okay, this is what we're saying. Proposed first floor extension to existing bungalow. Having read the officer's report and heard the debate... Hold on, this isn't a blue sheet, is it?
Sorry,
There you go,
Councillor
the
Virgo.
extension
I haven't
Just
seen the blue
pause.
sheet. I asked for one, but I didn't see
Please
it.
pause. Stop right now. Let's sort this out, please, because we mustn't do it wrong.
The recommendation that's been
Here it is.
moved needs to be voted on before you start sharing the wording of the blue sheet in public.
I'm sorry, I didn't... Could I...
Yeah. Would you mind repeating that, please?
The recommendation that's been moved and seconded needs to be dealt with before you can start referring to the wording of the blue sheet in public.
Chair, if I might suggest there is a paper copy of the sheet making its way along the desk. Perhaps if we just pause for a minute to allow members to read it, that might be an appropriate resolution.
Okay, thank you. Can we not have chats about it, please? We'll just read it quickly, yeah? Okay, I think we've done that bit. So you've just given your warning that we have a blue sheet if this motion falls, yeah? Okay. Anyone else to speak, please? Councillor Collins, yeah.
I still have grave concerns about this application. I've seen all the measurements for sunlight, but those bungalows are so close to the Bokara bungalow at the moment, and I think to put an extra story on that will impact mostly the residents of the bungalows in Mulberry Close, and especially number 11. I think the property is still overbearing. Some of the issues with the previous application, with the moving of the bedroom windows to the north-south rather than the east-west ones, and the glazing specified for those overlooking the gardens, have in some way improved the proposal. But for me, not sufficiently. I believe this application is unneighbourly, and I will not be supporting it.
Anyone else to speak, please? Yeah, that's fine, absolutely, yeah. For the purposes of the debate, we have to have a seconder. You can change your mind, because, you know, you have to hear all the facts. Councillor Zahuruddin?
I can see the report suggests minimum impact to Mulberry Close, but I'm not entirely convinced that's the case. Going through all the details, and of course the details from the debate and from Mr. Denton, who is directly impacted by this application. So therefore I won't be supporting this application tonight.
Anyone else? No? Well, having had a few years on this committee, I know that the appeal inspectors have rules to go by, and so do we, to be honest. And the planning officer has had regard to all the rules, and he has years of planning judgment, clearly, and the recent experience of the appeal. And whilst I really don't like the fact that they're putting an extra story on Bokara, I think it is unneighbourly, but it's not in terms of what the planning rules say. So I'm very unhappy, and I don't really want to see that happen. But if it has ticked all the boxes according to the appeal, then I can't see how we are going to get through an appeal, and therefore I will support the application. I'm sorry. Okay, anybody else to speak? No? Well, you've spoken already, haven't you? Okay, it's time to take a vote. And should this motion fall, then we have a second motion. All those in favour of this application to approve Bokara's action? And those against?
Eight. So it falls.
There's no abstentions, no. Thank you. The motion has fallen. Shall we have the blue sheet?
So, Madam, I'd like to propose the new motion on the table for members, if I have a seconder.
Councillor Pressland will second.
I don't want to speak. I'd like it to go to the vote. I think this is pointless.
Okay, we do need to see the blue sheet, yeah, on the screen. Yeah. Shall I read it out? No? Okay? So let's go to the vote. So you've moved, you have second, Councillor Preston. Those in favour, please? Those against?
Yeah, it's unanimous. Oh, your abstention.
I'm abstention.
Yeah,
Thank you. Oh, right. That concludes the this application. If you're here for that application, if you would like to leave now, it'd be a great time. I'll just pause for a moment before we take the next one. Thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you. Okay, let's go to the item at page 11, Land at Bog Lane, New Forest Ride. Oh, we're still waiting. Oh, gosh. Yes, we're not sure how to proceed because the first speaker hasn't showed up for this one. So we're just consulting the rules. Pardon? Yeah, the objector hasn't shown up. Mm-hmm. We'll just have a little pause to make sure we're legal. Oh, could he be waiting outside? You called him. Oh. Okay, we have a ruling that if the objector isn't here to speak, then I'm afraid we can't take the applicant's submission either, because otherwise things would be uneven and unfair. So we need to just move on without speakers. May we have the officer's report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Margaret McKevitt presenting this item, Land at Bog Lane. This is a full application for residential development for 59 dwellings with open space, landscaping, vehicular access and pedestrian links, SUDS features. The site is an allocator site in the site allocations local plan, where policy SA3 allocates the site for 40 dwellings. The allocation estimated the site could accommodate 40 dwellings on a site area of 1.72 hectare. This calculation excluded an area of hard standing, which has now been included within the boundary of this site, resulting in a larger site area of 2.22 hectares and a larger capacity. The application is being reported to the Planning Committee because more than 5 letters of objection have been received. Members visited the site on Saturday, I believe. Currently the site is well treed, mature trees along the boundaries with New Forest Ride and the railway line. The majority of those boundary trees will be retained, other than those that would need to be removed to create the vehicular and pedestrian access onto the northern section of New Forest Ride. Trees within the site will be cleared, but these are not covered by any tree preservation orders, and many of those trees are self-seeded. The site does form part of the development plan, and the allocation of the site for residential development and inclusion within the settlement area will contribute towards meeting the housing needs in the local plan period. This application proposes 59 units. Parking is provided on site on plots within parking courts and with some garages, and it fully meets parking standards. The position of the access onto New Forest Ride is considered by the Highway Authority to be acceptable, and a separate pedestrian link is also provided onto New Forest Ride. There is also an opportunity to provide a pedestrian link from the south of the site to Martins Heron Station, subject to agreement with Network Rail and South Western Rail. And any Section 106 agreement will also include traffic regulation orders, which can help to restrict parkings within the development. And given the proximity of the site to Martins Heron Station, those measures would help to prevent excessive commuter parking within the site. And within the site, open space is provided for residents. The area east of the site, shown in grey there, is owned by Bracknell Forest Council, and there are opportunities to secure access within this woodland and for woodland management to take place by the applicants through a Section 106 agreement. Within the site, trees will be planted within streets and in the open space areas, and that does include provision of fruit trees within garden areas. And these replacement trees will form a requirement for green infrastructure as a result of the loss of trees currently on the site. SUDS features will be provided within the site. A swale will run along the western boundary to a drainage feature in the southwestern corner. This swale is outside garden areas so that future maintenance of the swale can take place. And SUDS features are provided on the eastern side of the site, which includes ponds and also crates, I believe. Infiltration will take place within the site, and that will reduce the amount of water leaving the site from its current levels. Surface water will not be discharged to the public network, and Thames Water has no objection to the planning application. Network Rail have been consulted on the application in relation to any drainage impact on the railway line, and they have no objection to the application, subject to a condition to create no additional changes to the levels of land immediately adjacent to the railway line, and no retaining features along that boundary. The application proposes 31 houses and 28 apartments, with a mix of house types ranging from 1-bedroom apartments to 5-bedroom houses. And the heights of buildings on the site also range from 2 and 2.5 storey houses, and the apartment buildings at 3.5 stories in height. The apartment building, which is the apartment buildings are on the eastern part of the site here, will also provide a backdrop to the site and a buffer to the gas reduction station behind. Do have some pictures of elevations. These are the proposed elevations for the apartments at 3.5 stories with a mansard roof, and other views there. Some of the properties, these are the houses opposite the apartments, smaller, more quite a development with a access under the fog, and some of the larger properties within the site, which shows the variety of character areas and designs within the site. On the site, B&G of 3.78% can be achieved on site, but the wet woodland habitat has been retained in the southeast corner. Initially, as applications submitted, that would have been lost, but the redesign of the site does retain that. Off-site B&G to reach the 10% B&G target can be secured through the Section 106 agreement. The 106 agreement will also secure contributions towards Thames Basin Heath SPA to secure woodland management on and off-site, open space and public value and community facility contributions. As part of the application, a viability report has been submitted that concludes that the development will not be viable, so affordable housing cannot be provided, to reach the levels required in policy LB16 of the Bracknell Forest Local Plan, which seeks that 35% of new homes on sites of 10 dwellings or more should be affordable housing. However, policy LP16 does permit a viability assessment to be submitted to justify a relaxation of that requirement. That viability assessment has been independently reviewed on behalf of the Council, and this review confirmed that the development would not be viable, would not generate a surplus to enable affordable housing to be provided. However, subsequent to that assessment, the applicant has included 6 affordable housing units to be provided on site, which will be secured through a Section 106 agreement. And in addition, the applicant intends to seek Homes England grant funding to secure an additional 7 affordable housing units on site. That grant funding cannot be secured at this stage, but that will be part of the process through the 106 stage. The 106 agreement will require the applicants to make reasonable endeavours to secure that funding. But the 6 affordable units will be secured, and they will be 4 3-bedroom houses and 2 4-bedroom houses, which would meet our priority housing needs for family housing. And those houses will be for social rented and for affordable rent. The 7 additional affording housing units, if grant funding is secured, would comprise a 3-bedroom house and 4 2-bedroom apartments and 2 1-bedroom apartments. And the 106 agreement does include a requirement for a late-stage review of viability to be carried out. If, as a result of that, additional contributions can be secured, they will go towards affordable housing, community facilities and open space. The supplementary report has been prepared, and the application is a recommendation for approval subject to the completion of a Section 106 agreement and conditions as set out in the supplementary report and the main report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Questions for the officers, please. Councillor Mackenzie Boyle.
Thank you very much indeed for the detailed report. So the affordable housing policy LP16 not adhered to. Are we going to do LP17, which is the provision of specialist housing? Any of that going to be going in? We've been given the SPD, the housing supplementary. So, you know, I'd quite like some of these things to be adhered to while we are having these very large developments.
Yes,
thank you, through you, Chair. There are conditions to secure the accessible housing, so that is something we would seek to achieve. LP16, yes, although it does seek 35% of housing to be affordable, there is that provision within the policy for a viability assessment to be submitted, and if the scheme is not financially viable, then that policy can be relaxed. So in that sense, it's not a breach of that policy. It is, there are additional requirements in that policy that do allow viability to be considered. However, even though the site is not financially viable, the applicants have offered 6 units on site.
Yes, please.
Very much. I find this is quite amazing, actually. Why do we encourage them developments that don't give us what we need and what we want and what we have spent an awful lot of time doing, putting a housing supplementary planning document together when we're pretty much ignoring it? Why are we doing this?
Please.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Yeah, policy LP16 does seek on-site affordable housing, but the policy as adopted does allow for viability assessment to be made. We have independently assessed that viability and came to the same conclusion that a surplus would not be generated to permit 35% of affordable units to be provided. So it's not contrary to that policy. That is a provision of the policy.
Thank you. Please don't chat when the officer is speaking. Come on. Councillor Smith, please.
Thank you, Chair. As the ward member for Swinley Forest, this is in my patch, and I've had quite a lot of correspondence from residents around this over the last year or so, I think since it first went for public consultation. It's unfortunate that the public speaker, for whatever reason, hasn't been able to join us tonight. So I do have a number of questions I'd like to ask, just based upon issues that have been raised with me by residents recently, because I think it's really important that they're discussed during the meeting tonight. I'll start carrying on from Councillor Mackenzie-Bore's points with regards to the affordable homes and the shortfall of affordable homes against our standard. I'm interested, the applicant submitted a viability assessment. My understanding is that that viability assessment indicated that no affordable homes were viable, and yet now apparently they're offering 6 affordable homes, so clearly those are viable. I'm just wondering, how do we judge that viability assessment when it's clearly not accurate to the situation at this point? If the developer is, if it is viable for the developer to build some homes.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Yeah, on the viability, yes, the initial viability assessment was submitted, and we have had that reviewed. In fact, we did go back to our assessors with I think 3 separate occasions, and we were satisfied that the scheme was not financially viable. The applicants have chosen to offer the 6 units despite the viability report, which obviously in terms of local authority, to achieve 6 units that we thought we wouldn't achieve is a bonus in that sense. But I do appreciate why you're asking the question, if it's not viable for any units and then 6 have been offered. But I think as a local planning authority, we would accept, affordable housing is a benefit. The scheme is not contrary to policy LP16 because of the viability, but as a bonus of that, 6 have been offered, and there is the opportunity for Homes England grant funding.
Councillor Smith, please follow up.
Thank you, Chair. I do appreciate, yes, it's definitely clearly a betterment from no affordable housing, and that's positive. It's more just with regards to the validity of that document. It just calls into question whether the whole basis for that document is accurate. I mean, or are we saying essentially that it's not viable, and essentially the applicant's offering to build these homes for us at a loss?
Have Assistant Director, please.
Through you, Chair. It's quite a complicated field, and I don't profess to be an expert, but with the viability appraisals, there's set inputs that you would that would be taken into account, and also there's a set profit level that is allowable. So a scheme could be found to be non-viable for the purposes of this policy and verified to be so, and yet a developer might make a decision for a number of reasons to actually spend additional money in relation to the provision of affordable housing, as an example.
Thank you. I think we had, Councillor Penfold and then Councillor Collins.
The site is called Bog Lane. Could we have more detail on the drainage measures? There's 3 swales, you've said, and I believe there's a retention pond somewhere. Could you point out where they are going to be and give a little bit more detail on that, please?
Thank you, Chair, through you. We do have our drainage officer online who I think will be happy to talk through the drainage scheme.
Yeah, that'd be great. Please. Hi.
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks. Good evening, all. So I would like to start off by sharing my screen to kind of give a background into the bogginess of the site and what is causing that. I'll share my screen in a moment, please.
Yes, we can see that now.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so this is the site boundary in red here. And then as you can see, to the east of the site, there is a watercourse that runs southwards and then westwards towards the site itself. And then once it hits Bog Lane, it goes under the Network Rail asset as a culvert, and then further from there is further culverted through these suburban areas. So the risk of the site is all from the depression of the site itself, coupled with the fact that there's this ordinary water course that runs towards the site, past it, and then, as I said, further south of the site. So to understand the flood risk to the site itself, we asked the developer to model what we call to undertake a hydraulic modeling to understand what the flood risk is to the site, and that's exactly what they've done. So in the next page, as you can see here, the effect of all the site conditions is such that in extreme rainfall, the watercourse itself becomes flooded and it affects the land adjoining to the watercourse, and then it exacerbates as it flows towards the site. And before it actually gets the chance to get through the culvert, in the event that the culvert reaches its capacity, the watercourse will kind of spill into the site itself here in the southeastern boundary. So that is how the ditch affects the site itself. And if I may just zoom in a little bit to make it a bit clearer. There is also flood risk that is being impacted when there is flooding on forest on the road. And because the site itself kind of lies below the surrounding levels, the water from the roundabouts kind of is able to enter the site, and it floods in the northwestern corner of the site itself. And then we have these low spots within the site itself that can also hold water when there is rainfall. So this is our understanding of the flood risk to the site as a result of surface water or overland flows from the neighboring areas of the site itself. So we asked the developer to take this into consideration in order to determine the layout of the site itself. So moving on to the next screen. So this is the layout of the site. And as you can see, that area that is normally boggy from that overspill from the watercourse has all been left as it is, as an existing woodland. You might recall that this southwestern corner was also flooding, and it's also been left as a natural depression as it is. And then the flooding that was being affected from New Forest Ride as well in this northwestern corner has also, that area has also been left as existing woodland as it is, so that it can continue to hold the water that is coming within the site. So in order to make these attenuation features hold as much water as it can, the developer has put some bands along the section here so that it can hold as much water as possible without flowing into the development itself.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this is how the flood risk to the site has impacted on the layout itself. So all the areas that from the model it felt like it would continue to flood has all been left off to hold water. And due to the flood risk of the site, the original proposal of 81 dwellings, which some of them would have been located in these areas, had to be tremendously reduced to the current 59 dwellings on the site. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you, Efwa. Does that explain things?
A little bit, yes.
A little bit. Would you like
the flooding that's going on down currently, I understand. When the water gets to the railway line, which has been banked at that point, are there culverts underneath it, or will there be culverts to take the water away?
Yeah, so there's an existing culvert, so it's already existing, and then it's further culverted further southwest in the suburban area.
Right, thank
So
you.
there's not going to be any additional culverting, if that is what your question is. Everything is just going to be retained as it is.
So we've just got a depression and a tailor-made place for the water to collect in each of these places. Yeah.
Yes, that is correct. So the idea is not to alter any of the areas where water is currently being stored. So it has been retained as existing, which is best practice.
That's great, thanks. Any other questions for the Councillor Smith and then Councillor
I think Councillor Collins might have been before me, actually.
Councillor Collins first.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Could you just indicate all the other attenuation ponds that are on site that are proposed? And also, this diagram, yes. And also, I believe there's some crating in other areas. Could you show us where that is too?
Okay, sure. So in addition to accommodating the overland flow routes from outside of the site itself, the site also has to have its own sustainable drainage elements to take care of water that is directly falling on the site itself. So this has been catered for by various means. So there is permeable paving in the road areas. So that is what you can see in the kind of lightish grey shading. So it's in the road itself and in some of the parking areas, in the communal parking areas. So that is one element, permeable paving. And another element will be underground crates. So those are the blue shading that you can see under some of the parking areas. And then if I may just zoom in a little bit, there's some crates in the road itself. And then you can see these ponds as well that have been proposed. So all in all, it's there to provide the storage volumes that is required to store the water in order to allow infiltration to occur on the site.
Thank you.
So the site primarily drains via infiltration.
That's great. Councillor Smith next, I think.
Thank you, Chair. I'll continue down my list. Just to pre-warn, I've got about 6 items that from the residents have raised, but obviously some of them other members may ask questions on. The next one I'd like to ask on is with regards to impact on the character of the area and how we judge that. So the properties are, well, they're described as 2.5 or 3.5, I think, which really is essentially a 4-storey where the top story is within the hip of the roof, which is very different to the rest of Martin's Heron. Martin's Heron is predominantly 2-storey, detached or link detached, or in a small number of circumstances, semi-detached properties, which is very different in style to this. I appreciate that this is it's not immediately adjacent to any of those properties. It's in a separate area on the other side of the road, and there's quite a lot of screening. But I'm just interested as how do we judge that, and how do we come to a view as to whether this is or is not acceptably compliant with the existing character of the area?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Yes, as Councillor Smith said, there's a variety of heights within the site, and the site in many ways is quite self-contained. It's tree-lined to the road boundaries and to the railway line boundaries. In that sense, it allows an opportunity to create a character of its own. The highest points of the site are the apartment buildings, 3.5 storeys, and the height there is being used really to create an entrance feature and to create a backdrop of the apartments where they'll be seen against the woodland on the adjacent site. And there isn't necessarily a requirement, if you're meeting the character, to replicate the character of the site. I mean, this is a predominantly residential area, but also, of course, there's the Tesco superstore across the road and community facilities and the railway line. And the site really gives an opportunity, I think, to create a character of its own that doesn't jar against the development outside. Most of the properties are family houses, heights used at the ends of streets, these features here and there, and the apartments around the side, and they frame the development. So I feel that this is an appropriate character. I think it will be an attractive development, and I don't think it will stand out and jar against what's a lot of the properties around are 2 stories, and I don't think there's necessarily a need to replicate that one height development which perhaps is in the area. So I hope that answered your question. Okay.
Thank you. Yes, do you want to follow?
Thank you. In a similar vein then, another issue that many residents have raised with me is concerns with regards to the density of the site, and particularly many of them have highlighted that the allocation for the site in the local plan is for, I think, around 40 properties, and this is closer to 60. Although I'm aware that at one point I think the proposal was even higher. So again, I'm just wondering how that potentially feels like it could have an impact on the general feel of the area if it's becoming a sort of more densely populated area. Again, I'm just wondering if you could illuminate on how we judge and consider that.
Yes, of course, through you, Chair.
Yep.
Yeah, the original allocation was for 40 dwellings, and that was on a smaller site, and I think the density was assumed to be in the range of 35 dwellings per hectare. The site is larger, as part of the hard standing has been taken into the site, and the density, it has increased, but we're sort of the 36, 37 level. And whether or not density is appropriate, I don't think it can be judged on a numerical basis. It has to be on how that development sits on the site. This scheme, of course, does include apartments, so although density is higher, site coverage isn't necessarily higher. And the density here, I feel, is met and still allowing for open space and retention of, land for the drainage features, etc. So I don't feel that it's necessarily a high density that it would seem more urbanising than the developments round, the residential development round. And of course it is a little mixed area with having the supermarket nearby and the railway station. So I feel that given the larger site and allowing for apartments to be fit in, that the layout here doesn't appear cramped, it doesn't appear overly dense for this area. Thank you.
Thank you. Shall we have, sorry, I've forgotten who is next. Shall we have Councillor Zahuruddin, please?
Thank you, Chair. My questions are around affordable homes. So does the viability assessment take into account the proposed market prices of the properties that those are about to be sold post-development?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Yes, the viability assessment did include references to likely prices for the properties. And in fact, that was one of the areas that we did go back several times to our independent assessors to query if the catchment of the market prices was appropriate. And we were satisfied with those answers. It assessed similar schemes throughout the borough and close to the site. As mentioned in the 106, we would look for a late stage review of viability, and that would look at what prices we're doing at that point. So if prices were likely to be achieved would be higher on this site, we would have the opportunity to seek additional contributions for off-site affordable housing and other infrastructure requirements.
Thank you.
Through Chair,
Yes,
supplementary questions. I'm slightly bit uncomfortable with the fact about the viability of the project with the ratio of affordable homes. So my question is, what level of scrutiny are we going to put in place to ensure the overall project is going to be developed at the right acceptable standards? Because if there's an issue with the viability of the project, are there going to be any issues to cut down on some standards? Those are essential to meet our high standards that we have in our local authority. So what process do we have to ensure that's the case?
Thank you, Chair. Through you. The application does include numerous conditions to cover various areas such as landscaping, materials, ecology surveys and provisions there. And of course the approved plans. I mean, if there was any attempts to sort of value engineer the scheme down, we would be looking, I think, for amendments to the scheme, because we are looking for a particular layout and particular house types, and we'd seek assurance on materials and highway measures and drainage measures. If the applicant felt that those couldn't be met on a viability ground, obviously their choice is whether or not they develop the site. But once permission's granted, we would expect that scheme to be implemented, or we would be looking for a new scheme and amendments, which of course would come back in for consideration.
Thank you. Should we, Councillor Penfold wanted to, no? Okay, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I'll continue working down my list. I'll give Margaret a break for a minute and turn to highways. So some of the objections that have been placed have been around concerns with regards to the access to the site and the proximity, particularly to the roundabout outside Tesco's. I'm aware that highways haven't raised any objections to the scheme, and I'm also aware there's often more of a science to this than I think a lot of people realise. And I'm just wondering if the highways officers might be able to explain how they look at a junction like that and how they assess kind of, you know, what are the thresholds and things that you look at to determine is it safe or is it not?
Through you, Chair. The design of the access junction, which is a Ghost Island right turn lane, is in accordance with the design manual for roads and bridges, and is in accordance with our highways design guide. We have worked with the applicant to ensure that the lane widths meet our requirements for that junction. Initially, the lane widths on the turning lane were narrower at one end, and the axis has actually been shifted slightly to the east from where it was originally proposed to ensure that those requirements can be met. We also have the crossing point with the island to the east of the junction, and we have worked with the applicants again to ensure that we've got sufficient margins on the western side of the access and on the eastern side of the access. The applicant has provided through their highways consultant swept path drawings to show that the appropriate vehicle types can get into and out of the site, and it is safe, and the Section 278 highway agreement will be required in order to form that access onto the highway, and that includes a requirement for a road safety audit to be undertaken at that point.
Thank you. Another, and then we'll take...
Thank you, Chair.
yes.
Moving on then to parking, I know there are concerns due to the proximity to Martins Heron Station that the area could become a bit of a magnet for commuter parking, which is already an issue on roads in that part of Martins Heron. I'm just wondering what provisions are proposed to manage that risk and ensure that there is, you know, remains adequate parking on site for the residents of the new properties.
Through you, Chair, two-part answer, and I'll take the second part first, if I may. The parking that is proposed for residents on site, and that includes the visitor parking and the parking for the dwellings, is compliant with our parking standards SPD. Second answer to your first part of the question is about deterring commuter parking for the station. There are provisions through the Section 106 legal agreement and conditions to ensure that there is provision of a traffic regulation order to facilitate enforcement action on those roads to ensure that overspill parking from neighbouring station requirements shouldn't occur.
Councillor Collins first, because she's tried several times.
Just to carry on from parking, on parking, some of the homes have garages, and I know that in Warfield, which is my ward, we're replacing garages with carports because garages are very rarely used for parking cars. So why are we changing back into having garages in schemes?
Through you, Chair. The Parking Standards SPD allows for garages or carports to be provided with appropriate size standards for either. The applicant in this case has proposed garages. The Parking Standards SPD does not preclude that, but we have conditioned them to be maintained for parking and therefore can take enforcement action if that isn't the case. And in Warfield, we have had a lot of applications to add doors to the carports that have been provided, and although that isn't the application that is in front of you, that has caused additional tension because we end up with a situation where the garage, as formed by adding a door to a carport, is therefore substandard in terms of our parking standards SPD sizes, where in this instance what is proposed does fully meet the size standards set out in the parking standards SPD.
Okay, thank you. Can I just add? Where are all the visitor spaces located?
Through you, Chaired. Margaret, do you have that plan? If not, I will attempt to find it on my system whilst we're talking, so just give me 1 second and I will find it. There we are. Right, so just close down various other things that don't relate to this. Right, share my screen. Where is that? There we are. So there is the parking plan, and if I can drag things out of the way, we can see the key in the top corner, which shows us the allocated parking in blue, allocated cover parking, so carports or garages. There are a couple of carports, following on from the previous question, and the visitor parking shown in yellow. So if we turn to the plan, you can see the allocated parking there in blue. So this is the parking for the flats, with the visitor parking shown in yellow. So you can see for the flats there's 2 visitor parking spaces here. There's a block of 4 visitor parking spaces centrally, which serves both the flats and the neighbouring houses. There is a visitor parking space in the northern area of the site. There's 2 visitor parking spaces in the southwest corner of the site, and there is a visitor space in the southeast corner of the site. So they are well spaced through the development to serve the different houses and different range of house types.
Councillor Virgo.
Chair, can I just go back to Councillor Smith's point, or at least he started to talk about it. I'm right in saying, aren't I, the Spine Road around the site, inside the site, is adopted by this council?
Through you, Chair. In part is the answer to your question. I will again share the same plan that I just had because that's probably the easiest thing to look at. The Spine Road is proposed to be adopted along from New Forest Ride down to the substation here, with a turning head here for refuse collection vehicles. The remainder of the loop is not proposed to be adopted, and the reason for that is primarily around drainage, that the crates and the drainage that all sits below in order to allow the infiltration doesn't meet our adoption criteria for adoptable roads, and so the developer has chosen to keep that as private and will presumably manage that through a management company and resident service charge.
Thank you.
Chair, if I must jump on that.
Yeah.
Andy, the thing that worries me, to be honest, because you answered to Councillor Smith, but even on that Spine Road which goes down to the gas area, or wherever it was you suggested, the electricity, was it? As I understand this, if we don't put double yellow lines down there, or we don't restrict it in some official way, because the police won't go in and move cars because they've, we've opted out of that scheme. So unless they're obstructing particular things, so I for the best will in the world, people will park down there and take a bit of a punt while they grab a train because of the cost of parking in the station. And unless we have a proper system of stopping people parking there, it's so difficult because you know, by the time someone's rung up and said, oh, this is illegal parking, they've gone because they've been doing odd hours and they've been commuting on the train, and you'll never find them. You know, I've seen it in, to be honest, I'm sorry, the question's long, but I've seen it in Twickenham, and a lot of people did do that in Twickenham, in side streets, to get onto the station. And in the end, they had to put double yellow. They had to have a parking restriction for everyone, which is a bind, but I can't see another way of doing it. I wonder if you could explain.
Through you, Chair, I refer back to my response to Councillor Smith. The traffic regulation order provisions that I set out in response to Councillor Smith include the opportunity to put double yellow lines and to have parking enforcement. So that is exactly what I was referring to.
Sorry, I didn't understand that then. And presumably we will do that, or we'll only do that when it becomes a problem? What's the answer?
I think that's a question you need to put to your parking enforcement team and not to planning.
But it'll come back to you, won't it? Because you'll have to do a scheme, and then you'll have to apply to everyone to see if everyone approves the scheme, and it goes on for 6 months, 8 months.
The traffic regulation order process is separate to the planning process.
I rest my case, I think.
And that process will, the requirement for the traffic regulation order will form part of the planning permission through the legal agreement, and therefore the relevant drawings and submission of that traffic regulation order will need to be done in accordance with that legal agreement to ensure that that is in place at the right time before development is occupied, for example.
Thank you. Councillor Smith again, please. Oh,
Is it my turn? Yeah. Okay. Biodiversity net gain. So I understand the applicant's not able to achieve the required BNG figures on site, and so they're making a contribution to off-site BNG. I just want to make sure, for everybody's absolute clarity, that arrangement is fully compliant with our policies and all relevant policies.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Yes, the BNG obviously is now mandatory, and that does allow for off-site BNG where it can't be achieved on site, and the statutory condition will be applied there that the biodiversity net gain plan should be prepared before work start on site, and we would seek the BNG monitoring contributions, so it does meet the requirements, although not on site. There isn't the requirement that it is met entirely on site. Thank you.
Supplementary, yeah.
Not a supplementary, but a separate question, if that's permissible. Yeah. Is it? Thank you. Yeah. It is my final question, I promise. The adjacent site is the gas pressure reduction station. I must admit, I'm not entirely sure what that really means, what a site like that is, but it sounds like it involves gas, which can have some hazards associated to it. I'm just wondering, are there any safety concerns or any environmental health concerns associated with the location of residential properties in proximity to that site?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Chair. We do have our environmental health officer on site, but I said that obviously when the site was allocated, that gas reduction station was there. We have consulted with the HSE, and obviously the responsibilities for safety are with the developers. No contamination conditions have been applied, not to say that we know there is contamination, but obviously to allow that to be looked at. We also have conditions covering any gas within the site, landfill gas site. Again, not to say that there is any, but just as a precaution given the nature of that site. I don't know if Jodie has anything further to add, but environmental health are satisfied with the scheme, with those conditions. And it said it has a site that has been considered for some years with the proximity to that station.
Thank you. Jodie, would you like to comment on that, please?
Environmental health, I have nothing to add. I think Margaret summarised well.
That's great, thank you. Are there any gas pipes running under the site or anything like that?
Thank you, Chair. Not under the site, and it's actually the site is in the outer consultation area for gas pipes in the area. As I said, and HSE have been consulted, and if any provisions are required, they will be put on. But there's nothing running under the site from our consultation constraints maps.
Thank you. Councillor Collins.
Trees. Right, I see that the applicant is going to plant about 100 trees on site to replace the ones which are being removed. I'm just curious more about the site boundaries. To the west of the site, when we visited the site on Saturday, there are a lot of trees from the road which provide a nice boundary to the site and screen it from the road. Who do they belong to, and how will they be maintained?
There's no change proposed to those trees. I'm presuming, I'm looking to Andy to see if they are highway trees off the boundaries. There's no requirement to remove those trees, and the boundary trees would be retained. So the trees to the east are our trees, and so that's why I was thinking they were possibly highway trees, and we are seeking, as part of the 106 agreement, rights to manage the woodland there that we own on a lease arrangement, I believe, so that there will be maintenance there. And on the northern boundary, of course, there's woodlands areas shown there, and they'll be part of a woodland management agreement. But there's, and additionally, of course, there's no change to the trees on the railway line either, so the significant boundary trees should be retained.
Okay.
And to add to that, on the western boundary with New Forest Ride, where it rises up over the bridge over the railway line, the embankments for some reasonable distance beyond the road are adopted highway. So any trees within those embankment areas are also highway trees, and therefore our responsibility as Highway Authority.
That's good, thank you. Councillor Temperton.
Is the maintenance of these trees, I've seen estates before where the trees are put in and then sadly they die, because who's watering and maintaining? Is this part out of the management fees, or is it part of the biodiversity net gain, or who is going to manage these to make sure they all survive, please?
Thank you. A combination, obviously, BNG within the site, we would seek a monitoring fee, but other trees that we would seek to retain as part of green infrastructure, they generally do fall within the management company on site. So woodland management as part of BNG, we would expect to be maintained in perpetuity, and trees, less trees within the site generally fall to a management company, and trees on our land, northeast, that would be again subject to woodland management by the developers.
Thank you.
One question for highways. I'm wondering if residents could get together in that whole area and demand some residents' parking permits, and whether that would be useful.
Through you, Chair, whilst in theory the area for the traffic regulation order, so the adopted highway section, would potentially have the opportunity. Obviously, if the traffic regulation order is for double yellows, that will prohibit parking through that section, so that would require a change to the traffic regulation order that was put in place. The remainder of the loop road that remains private would probably have to be an agreement through the management company of the development rather than through the Highway Authority to understand how resident parking might work on street in that area. But the provision of parking off street does meet our parking standards SPD requirements for all dwellings and for visitor parking. So there should be sufficient parking off street without the need for residents' parking permits to be provided.
Thank you. Councillor Temperton.
Can I just ask, it is concerning to me that the road will be unadopted, some of those areas. I understand why, but in the past, people have contacted me very regularly on new estates to say, Can you please confirm I'm trying to sell my house and they need to make sure the road will be adopted? So does it affect, have we got a history of it affecting anybody's sale of a house if it's on an adopted road or a non-adopted road?
Through you, Chair, the authority responds to requests from solicitors for house purchases regularly, multiple times a day, and there are many houses in the borough which are not on adopted roads, and there are many which are. As a borough, we have the approach where we have the opportunity for developers to have roads which are not adopted or to offer roads for adoption, and that's commonplace across the country in many other boroughs across the country. It generally doesn't cause a problem so long as the solicitor has the requisite paperwork from the house seller, and that's normally the developer's paperwork from when they bought the house originally, that sets out what rights they have over the estate roads. Then that is sufficient.
Thank you. Councillor Zaharuddin?
Through you, Chair. My question is around did the applicant submitted any or proposed any changes or amendments as an alternative to make the project viable? So where I'm coming from is like, has the applicant considered all the options that could have made this viable to bring in that 35% of affordable homes, or is it just there's no alternatives considered in this case?
Thank you.
Thank you. To you, Chair. Obviously, there have been changes to the application. In fact, when it first submitted, we had 81 units, and the scheme was not viable at that point either. So there haven't been any changes just to overcome the viability as such. We've had a lot of changes to the site because of the drainage works needed, which I'm sure have added to the costs of the scheme, but we haven't had a viability assessed again as a result of those increased drainage works. So I'm not aware of any other further discussions that have taken place to how viability could be improved, and obviously we have to assess the scheme in front of us.
Thank you, yes. I think that's all the questions. I need to move the recommendation at page 29, I think. It's page 29, 30. Yes, the other side of page 29. Page 30 of the agenda, with the amended recommendation on page 1 of the supplementary report. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Collins.
Happy to second.
Thank you. So, who would like to open debate, please? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I have had a significant degree of correspondence from residents with concerns regarding this scheme. I think it's really important just to preface my contributions to the debate by just explaining to any residents. I think I can see one resident who's turned up, and some might be watching online. But it's really important to be clear that my role on this committee is not as a ward representative, but this is a quasi-judicial committee in which essentially what we all have to judge is whether or not this application is compliant with planning policy. There's quite a number of issues the residents have raised, and I very much understand why a resident would be concerned with a scheme like this. And if you live over the nearby across the road from this, or you drive past this regularly, it's one of the main roads in and out of the area. It's a nice natural area that is being lost. Unfortunately, it is an allocated site. It's a site that's been designated in our local plan, I think since 2011. so it's been a long time coming development on this site, and I think it's important for residents to understand that essentially some development on this site is more or less inevitable. The question really is just what development and what proposals come forwards which are considered suitable. We've had quite a lengthy discussion and quite detailed responses from officers this evening across a whole range of areas, considering flood risk, considering the impact on the character of the area, considering highway safety and parking. I don't think there's anything that the officers haven't been able to give us a very clear, very detailed answer on tonight. It's clear it is a tricky site. We've got this issue around the viability assessment, but it's clearly a site that a lot of work has been done to get to a proposal which certainly the officers have proposed this evening is suitable and in line with our policies on planning balance. And I know it's a proposal that's evolved a lot over its history as well. I'm very grateful to the hard work of our officers in working through that with the applicant to get to the application that we have before us now, and particularly the changes that have been made to some of the application, the earlier versions of the application, which were had more concerning elements to them. I am still uncomfortable with this situation around the affordable homes. It's very frustrating to see applications for major developments coming forward which are not hitting those numbers, because they are very important to us as a borough. We have significant shortfalls of affordable homes in this borough, and we have still quite long waiting lists for affordable homes. So it's frustrating to see a development that's not achieving that. I can't profess to understand all the ins and outs of the viability assessment, but I think we have to accept the professional advice we've been given there, that's been looked at by independent experts who've been advising the council, who have accepted that. And I think also, it sounds like, despite that viability assessment, the applicant, perhaps, I don't know for a fact, but perhaps at their own loss, is still proposing some affordable homes on the site, which is obviously a whole lot better than none. So, I think on aggregate, therefore, I can't see any strong reasons to oppose this.
Thank you. Councillor Temperton?
Yeah, and mine's on affordable homes as well, because 35% would be 20 affordable homes, and there's 7 for sure, or hopefully for sure, and maybe 6 others. 6 others and 7, 6 for sure, and 7 if Homes England grant. I do hope this is possible. I am encouraged the fact this is much better than when we were first talked about it, when it had none. It does include some 3 and 4 bedroom houses as well, which is affordable, which is important. It does talk then later in the document that most of these would be for social rent or shared ownership. And it just worries me. I think we have to report and remind everybody that shared ownership is not an easy option. In recent flats in the Market Street, the shared ownership required a deposit of £16,000. So it's not an easy option for any of our young folks or families to acquire shared ownership when you require that amount of down payment. So I prefer them to be social rents, because social rent have shown so many times that it enables people to live there, to come off benefits, and to actually get into debt. Affordable homes, £200 a month more, is often not sufficient in this area for the same sort of quality of life. So social housing, social rent as much as possible, please. And I will be supporting this, because it is better to have 7 and then possibly 13 in the site. I think I like the way the trees are being left all the way around it. We visited, I think the way it's set out and the photo and the plans and everything look as if it was going to be a really nice place to live. And so I think that's a real positive, but I am hopeful that we can
make sure that when they have a new viability assessment later on, we're not going to come back to tell us that actually they were right in the first place, that it's not viable for any. I'm hoping that it is indeed viable for the 13 houses.
Thank you. Councillor Zahuddin.
Thank you, Chair. Again, on the topic of affordable homes, I'm not convinced that a development of this scale drops affordable homes from 35% to 23% at a time when our residents are in desperate need of such affordable homes, with increased costs, interest rates, overall inflation impacting the affordability of homes, in particular to our young residents who are working hard and desperately trying to get into the ladder. I understand applicant in this case has carried out viability assessment. However, I can't see enough evidence where the applicant has tried alternative options to amend the plans to make the development viable, to serve affordable housing limits and yet profitable to the overall project. I'm worried about producing viability assessment reports to cut down on affordable homes becoming a norm, and for that reason, I cannot support this application tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Collins, please.
Thank you. I will be supporting this application. We've heard that it's an allocated site, and I believe the plans in front of us now are a good option. The site is well screened from the roads and the railway. We've got a lot of trees around there. The affordable housing is an issue. We've all mentioned it. But the 6 confirmed homes are going to be larger houses, which is definitely what the borough needs. I'd like to thank the officer for including conditions to prevent subdivision of bedrooms. Hopefully that will work. And that's that. I could say a lot more, but I will be supporting the plans.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? No? I'll just comment that thank goodness for the extra viability assessment possible later in the process to make sure that we do have that right, and we've got as many affordable homes as we can get, because we desperately need more affordable social rent homes, desperately need to help people on their way. I think the work gone into this project has been enormous, and it's very impressive to see the thought that has gone into the drainage and the setting out of the whole site, and how it's well screened and there's lots of woodland around it. It's a very difficult site, and no wonder it's taken this long to get to a stage where it could be built. I'm looking forward to seeing it progress, so I will be supporting. Okay, shall we take a vote? Those in favour?
That's 11 in favour.
Those against?
That's 1 against. So it's carried.
Yes. Councillor Collins seconded it, yeah. Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for those who was here for that item. If you would like to leave now, that I'll just pause for a moment before we move on to the last. Okay. Okay. I think we may need to take a couple of minutes break. Would you like to? Yeah, thank you. Ready to resume. Lovely. Just wait till we're online. Thank you. Let's reconvene. Councillor Penfold? Sorry. So now we're on item number 7, page 63. May we have the officer's report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Kevin Lloyd-Jones, presenting officer for this case. It's a retrospective planning application for the siting of an in-post parcel locker to the northern side of the Aldi in Birch Hill, next to the highway known as Liscombe. The application has been called to Planning Committee by Councillor Brown on the grounds of highway safety. There have been no objections from the Council's Highway Authority nor from Environmental Health on noise impacts. The application site comprises an Aldi store with flats above, part of the Birch Hill shopping precinct. The lockers are located to the north of the store, to the side of the highway, where parking is restricted by double yellow lines. Public parking is provided towards the end of Liscombe, 40 metres to the east of the lockers. The entrance to the Aldi goods yard is just to the west of the lockers. The lockers are located within Aldi-owned land, with the canopy of the locker oversailing the pavement. Notice has been served on the Council's Highway Authority for that reason. As I say, the nearest car park is 40 metres away at the eastern end. There are residential units, as can be seen in the photographs, on the first floor of the Aldi building and to the other side of flats on Liscombe. That's a separation distance of about 19 metres to those flats. Now, the lockers are accessible 24 hours a day. The agent has stated that there are approximately 72 deliveries and or collections per day. Couriers will be instructed to attend the lockers only between 8 a.m. and 10 p.m. and to park in the car park at the end of Liscombe when visiting. A notice will be placed on the locker page of the InPost website to request customers not to park on the double yellow lines. The Council's Highway Authority has no objection to the lockers, stating they pose no highway safety issues. The Environmental Health Officer has no objection to the lockers on noise disturbance grounds. So looking at highway safety, the Highway Authority stated this section of the road does not receive high levels of fast traffic. The road link past the lockers already takes large vehicles associated with deliveries to the shopping parade. The vehicles delivering to the lockers are typically smaller than those. The InPost lockers offer a community facility at the Birch Hill Shopping Centre that reduces the need for multiple deliveries to dwellings in the area. As an aside, this could generate additional business for the local shops by those collecting or dropping off parcels. Bollards could be requested to deter parking on the footway, but this would reduce the width of the footway, making disabled or pushchair pedestrian access more difficult. The lockers do not interfere with the visibility displays from the access yard onto Liscombe. Now, in accordance with paragraph 116 of the NPPF, this states development should only be prevented or refused on highway grounds if there would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety. We do not believe there are sufficient grounds to substantiate a highway's reason for approval. Residential amenity. Environmental Health has not received any complaints regarding noise as a result of the use of the lockers since their installation, which was in April of this year. To determine potential noise impact, the applicant was asked to provide information regarding how the lockers are powered and whether there is any use of plant equipment such as air conditioning or compressors. The applicant confirmed the lockers are connected to the local electricity grid, drawing power as with any other electronic device. There is no use of any other plant equipment. The Environmental Health Officer considered it unlikely that the locker installation results in any noise disturbance to residents. Now, looking back at the conditions for the previously approved applications at the Aldi store itself, there have not been any limitations imposed on delivery to the main store, and as we know, the goods yard is exactly next door to the lockers. There was a mention of retrospective applications. As we know, these are subject to the same material considerations as other applications. And with regards to the landscaping, you can see the bottom right photograph shows the pre-existing situation. And it's not considered that landscaping was sufficiently important to the visual amenity of the area to object to its removal or request its replacement. So included with the conditions will be commitments to providing instructions for couriers and customers to prevent disturbance to neighbours. So as I say, a notice would be placed on the InPost website, and there will be courier briefing notes, and these will need to be provided to the local planning authority. So in conclusion, it's considered that the siting of the lockers will not have a detrimental impact on the amenity of neighbours, on the character and appearance of the area, nor on highway safety. No material considerations exist that there should be a departure from the development plan, and the retrospective application is recommended for conditional approval.
Thank you. Questions for the officer? Councillor Virgo.
Thank you, Chair. Was this the only position that was considered for this? And the reason I say this is because I can see it could cause some problem to the neighbours if people are coming, 24 hours and slamming doors and all that. It does seem a bit unreasonable. I don't know whether there was another place that was considered. I mean, I can see it's quite a useful facility, but I'm just wondering if that's really the best place to put it.
Thank you.
Through you, Chair, this is a retrospective application, so I can only consider the site where it is currently located.
Could you just make a point in a question? This is the second time Audi's done this, actually, because it was done with air conditioning units.
Is this a question, please?
And therefore, is it the second time that this has been done? Because I think it is. Just to make this point, is that right to this council? This is the second retrospective planning from Audi.
Through you, Chair, yes, I believe this application is submitted by InPost rather than Aldi. Certainly it's at the site of Aldi. I don't have specific information about the previous application.
Is it then may I ask a further question, is it on Audi land? Then Audi is responsible. Is that correct?
Sorry. Certainly there would have to be some agreement with the landowner in terms of the submission of the application, yes.
Yep.
Councillor Penfold and then...
Right. Audi were actually... Your question about whether other sites that could have been considered. Now, Albi were reminded they needed planning permission initially, in which case other sites perhaps could have been looked at and considered. But this didn't happen.
I know you need to do a question, Councillor Penfold.
Well, the question is, really, why wasn't... It's really the same as Councillor Virgo's. Why weren't other sites considered? And we can't tell that because they didn't apply for planning permission as they should have done.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie Boyle?
Yes, please. Thank you very much. May I ask, please, which is more acceptable? A footpath which is narrowed intermittently by bollards, or cars and probably quite heavy trucks with their wheels on the pavement? I don't think we really question, should we consider not having bollards on the pavement for safety?
Through you, Chair. We have an application in front of us that is here for determination, which doesn't include bollards. The Highway Authority looked at this. There is only a footway on the side of the road where the lockers are. There is not a footway on the opposite side of the road, and therefore if bollards were placed, they would obviously have to be set back from the edge of the road for safety, to avoid getting knocked by vehicles passing. And our position was that the addition of bollards through the only footway would narrow the footway unacceptably in terms of pedestrian access for those with disabilities and those with pushchairs. For example, if there had been a footway on the other side of the road, then the situation may have been different, because then you have a full width footway on one side of the road and you can narrow the footway the other side of the road without causing a permanent obstruction for all routes. Because there is only the footway on this side of the road, the Highway Authority's position was that the bollards would narrow the footway unacceptably.
Very much that. I absolutely understand that. Yes. So how do we deter the unneighbourly people with their wheels on the pavement? Yellow lines, something. But we've got to do that because of people with disabilities, pushchairs.
Through you, Chair, Central Government undertook a pavement parking consultation in the order of 3 years ago in order to work out whether or not they should ban pavement parking. The government have not reported back on the outcomes of that consultation to date. We are still waiting for the outcome of that consultation to be decided, and therefore at the present time it is not illegal to park on the footway.
Chair, this is a supplementary. Then I think it's disgraceful that the government hasn't done anything to support our residents in Bracknell Forest.
Did you have? No?
Thank you, Chair. The Highways Officer's assessment is that there isn't a risk to highway safety associated with the proposal. I presume because there's double yellow lines along that road, that's premised on the fact that there wouldn't be vehicles stopping immediately by the lockers, but they would use it properly as the application intends. I'm just a bit concerned that the location very much seems to invite people to break the rules and stop where there are double yellow lines. And I'm just wondering if used in that way, albeit that's not the intention of the application, if used in that way, would that have any impact on the assessment, or would you still consider it suitably safe?
Through you, Chair, we have to have regard to how parking is enforced versus what is marked on the street. And in the instance of double yellow lines, I have spoken with our parking enforcement team, who sit in another directorate, on a number of occasions about double yellow line parking, predominantly around the town centre when I'm out on my lunch break. And the answer has always been that they operate a grace period and allow people to move their vehicles before they issue a ticket. The one exception to that, where an instant parking fine is levied, is on zigzag markings for crossings. And so, in this instance, presuming it was enforced in the same way, which we can assume based on what is currently done within the rest of the borough, there would be a grace period applied. So if people were to pull up on those double yellow lines for a very short period of time, probably less than 2 minutes, to go to a locker and pick up a package and get back in their car, the likelihood is that would not be enforced because it would fall within that grace period. For deliveries and servicing, that grace period can be up to 15 minutes. So for the delivery vehicle, which the applicants, I believe, have stated is a larger long wheelbase van or similar, that could be up to 15-minute grace period for that vehicle. So yes, the vehicle could operate not in accordance with the double yellows and not in accordance with the delivery instructions which Kevin has set out they will be required to provide, and the statement on the front of the lockers not to park on the double yellow lines. That is down to how that is enforced in practice rather than the letter of what is painted as a double yellow line. The other effect here is obviously there has to be a parking enforcement officer present in order to enforce parking.
So not in...
As a supplementary, Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, I thank the officer. That was actually a very informative response, although I don't think it quite addressed my question, which was, if we are to assume that people might stop on those double yellows, what is the impact of that on your assessment of the impact on highway safety? Does that change the assessment, or do you still consider it safe if cars are parked there, for that grace period?
There is sufficient width on that bit of road, it is relatively lightly trafficked anyway. It already takes larger vehicles than would deliver to these lockers to the delivery area for the adjacent shopping parade. And Kevin's already pointed out that there is no restriction on the hours of operation of those deliveries to the adjacent shopping parade, whereas there are hours of restriction placed on the lockers themselves, and the addition of delivery instructions for drivers, etc., that Kevin has set out should help to mitigate those potential impacts. I think in general we have to hope that people will abide by the letter of the law and not park on the double yellow lines, but in practice blue badge holders can park on double yellow lines in any case. So a blue badge holder could park on those double yellow lines whether or not they were using the lockers and go and do their shop in Aldi, for example. So that has to be a general consideration of any area where there are double yellow lines, that people will park appropriately to allow other vehicles past, because blue badge holders can do so anyway.
Councillor Temperton, then Councillor Penfold, please.
Yeah, I was just going to comment that this road is... Oh, no, it's not a comment. Okay. Has there been any measurement of the sort of traffic? You said that the big trucks go down there because they're delivering, but the vehicles that are passing, is this a busy road or is it a quiet residential road?
Through you, Chair, I don't believe we have numerical traffic surveys, but the amount of development that is served by this link is relatively low. There is a small car parking area at the end of the street, which Kevin has referred to, but there are relatively few residential dwellings served directly off this link. Obviously, we do have the delivery areas both to Aldi and to the adjacent shopping parade, which will take larger vehicles. But the main parking area for Aldi is to the other side of the store, and therefore the predominant flow of traffic is into and out of the car park for Aldi rather than down Liscombe.
Thank you. Councillor Penfold.
Really, there's various conditions and suggestions to people not to park on the yellow lines and use the car park, which is probably the car park really for the flats and the workshops down there. How will it be monitored and enforced?
Through you, Chair, the applicant will have to issue us within a month of any approval the information that they will be publishing on their website and the information they will give into their couriers. And we will need to approve that, and the condition states that must be there in perpetuity as well.
Will there be tend to look at the website, people who are picking up from there anyway?
They cannot add notices to the lockers. It will just be on the website and the courier instructions. But the website is where they get their... It would be when they get their pickup reference.
So I can understand couriers getting their supplementary, but I can't see people just picking up. At the moment, they park on the yellow lines. They park on the pavement quite often.
Jenny, Councillor Penfold, can you keep that to later? Because you...
I can pick that up if you'd like, Chair. Through you. As somebody who has used lockers elsewhere in the recent past, when you get your delivery or collection instructions from the in-post to say, you know, your delivery has been delivered to locker number 7, whatever, it comes with a set of instructions. So you get information on where the locker is, how you access the locker, etc. So it's on that bit of information that they will be sent where that information will be present.
Councillor Smith, please.
I just wanted to ask about the condition with regards to the instructions to couriers. I mean, my personal experience with the courier industry is variable, and some are very professional, and some are, they chuck parcels over your fence and run away, and it can be quite a mixed experience. And I just try to, particularly in an industry where I think there's a lot of people who are self-employed, it's a lot of people sort of doing gig economy type roles. I'm just interested in the practicalities. How is that actually communicated? You know, if this is one of 100 stops that a courier's got in a day, how do we ensure through that condition that that information is reliably communicated to those couriers?
Through you, Chair. As I mentioned, the information that the courier receives will have to come via us for approval, and it's conditioned that has to stay that way. Obviously, we can't condition individual behaviour, but we would rely on enforcement if it's breached.
Councillor Virgo, please.
Andy, can I just pick up on the parking? Because are we, as a council, accepting the fact that couriers will park on it for a couple of minutes and then charge off? That's my question, but I would just add, if we were saying that they're not allowed to park there, that's our view, then we could put double red lines down there, which would say they couldn't park it day or night, which they are beginning to do in hospitals.
Through you, Chair, double red lines are currently not permitted on adopted highway except in central London.
Well, they are in a hospital.
Presumably that isn't adopted.
Don't think it's
highway.
adopted.
Presumably it's not adopted. No, but Liscombe is adopted, and therefore we can't do it because we are not a London authority.
That's unfortunate.
Right, hold on a second. Sorry, I must ask this question. So are you saying because we're not a London authority we can't use it?
We cannot use double yellow lines on adopted highway. It is not a prescribed...
Red ones?
We cannot double red lines on adopted highway because it is currently not a prescribed marking except in London.
So why, could you explain to me, it's outside Friendly Park Hospital and they've just done it?
Outside Friendly Park Hospital is presumably on private land and not on adopted highway.
I think it's owned by the council.
I can't speak for another authority's highway authority.
Could we check that then, please? And can I see the regulation on that? Because I'd like to take that up, because I think other places...
That's one for you to take up with the highway engineering team and not for the planning committee meeting.
Okay, who is there then? Who's the person to do it with, please?
Neil Matthews.
Neil Matthews or Nick Rose.
Okay, I will. Thanks.
Gary Cleaver is very good.
Do you have a further question there? No. Okay. So I'm struggling to formulate a question from all the bits and pieces I've got. We compared the use of the impost boxes with deliveries to Aldi. Supermarkets are generally quite regular in their deliveries, aren't they? Are they? They have to have things at specific times. So if that is the case, would you say that is the case?
Through you, Chair, I don't think we have any specific information on the deliveries other than the fact that they aren't regulated by planning condition in this instance.
Yeah, okay. I think there's some historic stuff that we should look at, but perhaps later. Have any acoustic checks been done on the neighbouring properties for cars stopping and getting out of their cars and slamming the doors and then getting the thing out of the locker and then getting back in their car and slamming the door, having the radio on, having a chat, anything like that?
Through you, Chair, could I ask the Environmental Health Officer to pass comment?
Ah, yes, please do.
Hello. No checks have been carried out. No acoustic checks.
Thank you. I found lots of information about the flats above Aldi, which were built since Aldi took over the store. Are you aware that those have got acoustic cladding and fenestration, but the older flats don't? have anything like that? Is that the question? Yeah, yes, it is.
Through you, Chair. Yes, the planning permission for those flats above the Aldi was conditioned to have a higher level of sound insulation.
Yeah. We heard about that. So that's that. I think that's all my questions. Did they used to have, actually, this one more, was there a requirement back in 2013 or 2008 when Aldi took over to have a specific schedule for deliveries and not beyond certain times, or was that very recent? Or
Through you, Chair. No, there were no conditions imposed on delivery times when in that permission.
no, my question was whether they did used to have those, or is that a recent imposition?
Through you, Chair, I think because there hasn't been a recent imposition, there's no condition now. So, and the case officer has checked and there hasn't been one previously.
Okay, I have to accept that. Councillor Virgo.
Could I follow up on the chairman's point? I mean, can we not put a position on this on timing, so it couldn't be at 2 o'clock in the morning or something?
Through you, Chair, there's a condition on courier drop-offs, but we can't condition when customers will use the units.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Time for debate. So I must move that we accept the recommendation on page, whatever it is, 71 of the agenda pack, with the amendment on page 3 of the supplementary report. So, yes, do I have a seconder?
I'm happy to second.
Thank you. For the purposes of a debate. Okay. Councillor Frewer, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I have concerns about this. A friend of mine actually lived in one of the flats at the bottom there, and unless that car park's been rebuilt in the 2 years since he's left, it's actually quite a small car park, and it was used by the residents in the flats. And there's an old folks' home just to the left, and some people used to park in there as well. So that car park's pretty full up. The rules said somewhere that they have to park in that car park. Where then no one's going to do that. So we all know they're going to be parking on this road, and to me, it's a sort of a road safety issue. If you look, there's the road, the main walkway up to Aldi cuts across that road, and isn't there from Birch Hill, and a lot of people walk across there. So it's a potential issue. It really is. I'm sorry, I can't support this. Sorry.
Councillor Mackenzie Boyle.
Thank you, Chair. I just can't support this application. They should have found a more suitable site. The parking is very risky and there is disruption to the residents. I can't possibly support this.
Thank you. Councillor Penfold.
I too can't support this application. I feel that Aldi could have found, as Councillor Mackenzie Boyle said, there are several sites that Aldi could have looked at and then applied for planning permission in a normal way, rather than building the slab for these and then carrying on building.
Councillor Virgo.
I would like to also not support this for lots of reasons, actually. It seems nonsense to me if we put double yellow lines and we accept the fact that people can park on them, even if it's for 5 minutes. What's the point? So that's ridiculous. And we see so much through the borough, and frankly, our enforcement people cannot cope with that. So it just encourages bad parking, first point. Second point, this is the second time since I've been in this planning committee that Audi have done a retrospective planning, because they did it over air conditioning and we had a big fight over that, and they didn't cover it properly and the noise level was too much. So this seems to be a regaining theme with this company, and I just will not support this. I'm afraid it should have been found in a better place. We are encouraging bag parking. Madness.
Thank you. Councillor Pressland?
Yeah, I won't be supporting this. I really have reservations about the parking, and as everyone else has said, I also have reservations about the people that live in the flats above, that they're going to have people turning up at 2 a.m, slamming car doors, radios on, and then they're going to go to the locker, open that, slam that. I just feel it's really in a bad spot. Audi could have found a more appropriate spot. They've got lots of frontage to their store, so I'm afraid I can't support this.
Councillor Templeton?
Even if it was in the front of the store, there's still flats above it. and there's car parks there that could slam the doors night and day, and there's still flats above it. So that these flats are surrounded by roadworks and car parks, and nobody's objected since but I still don't support this, because I think if you put double yellow lines, you have to, even if you assume that people can park. I've been fighting double yellow lines in the shop in Jennett's Park for ages to stop people parking on it. And I think if you've got double yellow lines, you have to say to people, these are not to be parked on for whatever reason. And it's quite a quiet road, I think, but people are just going to, because it's a locker and that's where your stuff is, you're going to park for 2 minutes and get out. So there's double yellow lines, so nothing should have been put the other side of it, as far as I'm concerned. But I think the noise and the rest of it is not significant, because it's been in since April and nobody has complained.
Councillor Penfold?
Town council objected, and there has been one objection, written objection.
Councillor Smith?
But not on noise.
Yeah, also I'm very much on the fence with regards to this application. I mean, I understand the technical points from officers with regards to the sort of citing of highways as a reason for refusal, and I think the highways officer has answered the questions with regards to safety. It just seems bonkers to me that it's appropriate to position these lockers in a location that very clearly invites people to stop on the double yellow lines. I can't see pragmatically that that's not going to happen. I appreciate it's all enforceable, although it sounds like essentially with these grace periods we wouldn't really practically be enforcing against it. It just seems like the fact that it's a retrospective application isn't supposed to sway us. That should cut both ways. We should be considering this exactly as we would any other application. If this wasn't built yet, I can't imagine we would be supporting this. Surely we would be working with the applicant to find a more appropriate location. I'm very much divided on this. I'm not sure.
So, if there's no other speakers for now, I will have my go. I was looking at the deliveries situation for the Aldi store. When was it? I've got my dates here. Aldi took over the Waitrose store in 2008, and delivery times were not checked. I don't know whether it was a legal requirement at that time or not. But in 2013, when they built the flats on top of the store with special acoustic measures, in the report, there's a noise assessment. It says it is understood from the store deputy manager that there are daily deliveries of stock at 7 a.m. and milk deliveries at 8 a.m. And there's also a further daily stock delivery scheduled for some time between midday and 4 p.m. Now, I don't think that any store wants loads and loads of deliveries all day, and certainly not at night if it's for food store. And they do need them regularly, so otherwise they're going to struggle to operate, I would have thought. There were no acoustic checks on neighbouring properties, but the flats were built with lots of acoustic, cladding, and their windows have got trickle vents so that it keeps the noise out as well. But they didn't do any checks on the neighbouring properties, which are older, and they have opening windows that look towards the Aldi store, the back of the Aldi store, and all around. The in-post boxes, they can have multiple visits per day at whenever, 24-hour use, could be the middle of the night or first thing in the morning, 5 o'clock, if somebody's on their way somewhere. They're down a cul-de-sac, so double the traffic, because the car has to, or the vehicle has to go that way and then turn round, more disturbance for the people down there, and then come back, and the doors going. As people get in and out, if they've got somebody else in the car, then they're going to be chatting and thinking about how they stop. Oh, I'm not going to be long. I'll leave the car running for a minute to keep it warm or whatever. In the summer, or keep it cool in the summer, the residents will have their bedroom windows open to keep cool, and they get more noise, more fumes. There could be radios on, could have a chat. There's no regular pattern for those visits either, and I think that is significant. It's not something the residents are going to get used to because it happens at a certain time. It's far more difficult if visitors are irregular, and to have that happening for 24 hours, I'm sure it doesn't happen all the time, but it should be very significant coming up to Christmas, I would have thought. And the nearby flats don't have aircon, and they do very closely overlook where the in-post lockers are. I really don't think that the green verge should have been concreted over. Whether or not it's valuable looking, it's still green. And all in all, and yes, there has been pavement parking, and it has blocked people's access, especially if they've got disabled people down the bottom. I just think this is totally unneighbourly, and I have to say I've got a blue sheet. So it's time to take the vote. All those in favour of the recommendation as stated in the agenda, please show.
That's none.
Those against?
11.
And abstention?
Sorry, 10 and then 1 abstention.
Thank you. Thank you very much for all that. I think we've fine. Oh yes, I've got to put the alternative version. Right, do you have a paper, or shall I? Oh,
I've got it on the screen.
You've got it on the screen, thank you. Oh yes, it needs to be. you all see that okay? I'd quite like to put an amendment in there. Is that possible? So, to activity, noise, and yeah, I just want to check whether that's possible. To put to activity, noise, and it says and disturbance. So activity, noise, air pollution, and disturbance at times, or something akin to that. Well, what about cars? It's not valid. Okay. Okay, so that the main motion having fallen, we need now to vote on the replacement. Hello? Yeah, need us. Excuse me. Shall we? We just finish with this. Not long now. Nearly home. So I propose that we take this motion, and I have a seconder, Councillor Collins. Thank you. All those in favour of the alternative motion, please show.
That's 10.
And those against? Abstentions?
That's 1.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, I think that is the end of our meeting. Thank you very much for attending. I'm so sorry it took that long for the lady from the flats. We're offline. It's taking its time to go, isn't it? Yeah. Thank you. We are